Okay. Thank you for being here and welcome to the December OpenEdX Meetup. My name is Esteban Echeverri. I'm co-founder of Olas Neo, an OpenEdX service provider, and also a participant of the marketing working group. So today we will have three presentations in today's session. One presentation from Abe Dearmer, CEO from Appsembler, Felipe Montoya from edX, and also Gina Makowski and Santiago Suarez from edX also. So the dynamic is going to be, we will have each presentation, it's going to be around 15 minutes. And after that, there will be around 5 minutes of a Q&A session. Please feel free to add your questions in the room chat while the presentation is running, and then we will read it at the end. Also remember that after this first hour of the event, there will be an unstructured area room. That's the main room. There will be cafeterias where the speakers will be there if you want to reach out to them or add additional questions, right? So one other comment, we will be recording the session. So if you don't want to appear in the recording, just feel free to turn off your camera. And before we begin, I want to give a special thank you to Nicole Kessler from Abstract Technology and Eden Hoodmeyer from Axin Collaborative for all the efforts they have put into organizing the OpenEdX meetups during this year. So there was a meetup every month, and there's a lot of work behind the scenes. So well, a big round of applause for them too. Now, let's start with the first presentation, and it's going to be presented by Abe Dearmer, CEO of Appsembler, who will explore how Tahoe simplifies the complexities of deploying and managing the OpenEdX platform. Abe, welcome to the December OpenEdX Meetup, and please go ahead with your presentation.
Esteban, thank you so much for the introduction. I really appreciate it. And thank you for the OpenEdX community for inviting me to have this talk today. I really appreciate that as well. So a bit of background on myself. I've been the CEO of Appsembler now since July this year, so relatively new to the OpenEdX community and learning a whole heap about OpenEdX and what it's provided. And it is a really great community, and it's great to see so many people turn up today. So thank you so much for that. I will now share the presentation. All right, awesome. So when we talk about OpenEdX and what Appsembler aims to provide, Appsembler, really what we've tried to achieve with OpenEdX is to provide a scalable hands-on training platform, and we really try to focus on achieving that hands-on integration. And with the scalable component of OpenEdX, allowing people to get up and running with 100 monthly active users, all the way up to 30,000, 50,000 monthly active users for some of our customers as they move through. And the biggest barrier that I've come to notice from talking to people as they come through in the sales process, current customers since I've been in July, is really the biggest problem that they face is how do they spend or justify the engineering effort to get up and running with OpenEdX, and then they see it as a rather daunting task to manage OpenEdX once they actually have it established within their organization. And it's mainly just the uncertainty that surrounds their use of OpenEdX and how far it's going to take them. And so really, when I look at Appsembler, it's a great gateway for people who are new to the OpenEdX community to really get a taste of what OpenEdX can provide. And one thing we really pride ourselves on is having that the open content and the portability of content when you use Appsembler means that you still own the content when you come to Appsembler. So if you do choose to leave and go somewhere else and start to look at other Open edX providers or want to set up your own Open edX, it's quite easy to export all of your content that you've created and to move on to another Open edX platform. And so for us, we like to think of a gateway to the Open edX community is great through Appsembler. But the other side that we really try to focus on is the hands-on side of learning. And so what we've really discovered and how learning has progressed, and I've seen this through my learning career, through university, college, and also I spent 13 years in the military, and we did a lot of different learning activities, and I was also an instructor for a long period of time. Really that progression, as we've seen, of the learning platform as it moves through. And so what we've been able to provide people is that Open edX experience as soon as they sign up for Appsembler, and within an hour they can have things set up. And so we allow people to set up their Open edX instance utilizing the studio editor that most people would be familiar with, all the way through to having a dashboard that's purpose-built for people to manage their Open edX instance and allow them to quickly have their site up and running, and with a few quick DNS settings on their side, updating some logos, they'll have a marketing website for their LMS up within about 10 minutes. And then along the lines of that as well is that one of the big problems that we found was people's ability to do that analytics and reporting on the go with their Open edX instance. And I know it's a problem that we're currently trying to solve with Open edX at the moment, and hopefully with the Quince release, we'll be able to see a lot of progression with that. But we developed internally Figures, which is a product that all of our tiers get when they join Open edX, join Appsembler, which is able to show them course progression, percentage of completion rate through courses, the average percentage completion rate, and allows them to also go through their individual users and courses to see their progression, allowing them to analyze courses and users as they move through. And then what we also look at providing at Appsembler is that evolution to learning by doing. And so it's not just enough in today's environment to stand out with a simple course with videos or text that gets created. You also want to have that hands-on experience for people when they get into Appsembler. And for us, we've had a big focus on software companies and people with a product that they want to get out there into the wider audience. And so what we actually developed as well was our Appsembler virtual labs, which we'll talk a little bit about later on. But we see the traditional LMS, multiple choice questions, simple grading, not a lot of complexity that goes with it. And then we have the progression into our video-based LMS, which really just has that video integrated within the LMS. And we see a lot of those are really prolific at the moment inside the LMS space of these easy to set up video LMSs, but don't provide much else to it. Then we've got our simulations that occur. Clicking on different elements, more like a bit of a demo environment for people as they move through. And then we've got our hands-on learning. So hands-on learning is really based around that live environment. And so throughout my years of training, hands-on learning has actually been one of the hardest things to achieve. It's either you have to roll out the real thing, which in some cases for people can be quite complex with installations and things like that that need to occur to achieve that. And what we've aimed to do is just reduce the barriers to that as well. And when we look at the traditional LMS, what we actually see is a lot of people are dissatisfied with their LMS and are looking to replace it. And realistically, I believe this is just someone chasing a golden goose to, oh, we want this, and something that doesn't really exist out there in the market. But really what we see is that a high drop-off rate from courses or a completion rate not being where people want it to be, which results in that poor user experience, not having that hands-on training. The content is hard to keep up to date due to complexities in the LMS, or when your product changes, you need to go back and change the content that goes along. with that LMS that's having that guided tour through the product. And then another one that we commonly see is that people come in with multiple systems without those integrations established. And so this is one of the key things as well when we look at installing Open edX is, well, how do I integrate my marketing platform like HubSpot? How do I integrate it with Salesforce? What if I want an SSO with our partner platform? And we aim to reduce those barriers with Appsembler to allow people to achieve those with Open edX. And so we aim to provide that frictionless experience. So instant sandboxes for hands-on learning with our virtual labs, but we also like to make sure that people get in and are able to establish their Open edX LMS with Tahoe, frictionless, sign up, 5 minutes, you can have that site live. Scalable. So this also comes into your user count as well as the ability to have multiple content authors and to get that content out to the broader audience. And so for us, providing that hosting experience and allowing people to move through there, and also that labs component, the virtual labs, where people are able to get that hands-on training at scale. And then integrated. So realistically, that analytics that we look at with figures that was created by Tahoe, also through our APIs and third-party integrations that we have with different marketing, sales component, customer success side as well. We see a lot of people using Appsembler Tahoe to achieve that internal training requirements, and people become customers as they come. So what problems do we solve at Appsembler? So we see people come through with limited training capacity. They're either doing instructor-led training or in-person training. And so we achieve that scalable online course delivery that comes with it. We see people come in, especially nowadays in the software industry, everyone knows how rapidly evolving everyone's product is. So what we have is that collaboration for course authoring as people come through, lowering the barriers to people being able to get into the LMS and actually make those changes. One of the most common things I hear is about how monolithic Canvas is and the challenges that people face with that. And when they come to Appsembler and see Open edX, they're amazed about how easy things are and how easy the course authoring experience is. The difficulty in offering that hands-on training. So with that, we offer these turnkey hands-on labs. So people's product, you're able to save it at this point in time and spin up that product to allow people to easily get into the software product as they go. And then one thing we commonly find with people using it for a marketing experience is they're not enough high quality leads. And so what we're able to do is create a university, stand that up within a week and start generating leads for their product as they move through. And so what does the solution actually look like that Appsembler provides? So really it's based off these three pillars that we have here. And so we've got our Tahoe by Appsembler. So this is really our Open edX experience with the authoring tool, assessment engines, badges, and certificates as they come through. Our virtual lab software. And so this is instant sandboxes for hands-on exercises, essentially enabling that learn by doing as they move through. And then the business intelligence. And so this is based off our figures, but also what we see there is these integrations. So we see people start with figures, and then as they become more and more advanced, they start to integrate with different products to track the user's activities as they move through Appsembler. So when we look at Open edX and how we increase that availability with our out-of-the-box analytics and reporting, it allows people to show the value of the courses and analyze where improvements need to be made. And so what we really focus on there is how do we allow someone to show the value immediately for what they're doing? Up and running in hours, not days. So with this, we really focus on, okay, well, how do we get our hands-on waiting for developers or, getting our intent across to contractors about, hey, this is how we want to build Open edX. And the community provides a really great service to anyone who wants to stand up Open edX. But what we really want to focus on is, well, how do we just make it easier to get it in the hands of people? The headache out of hosting. So one of the big concerns that we see a lot of people come through with is they say, Abe, I don't have a big technical team. How do I go about hosting Open edX? What if I want to make changes down the track? Where do I go from here? And so one of the key things that we look at is we provide that support, that we're your development team for Open edX with that 24/7 on hand to fix problems as they come up and ensuring that you don't have any downtime. Integrations, so these out of the box integrations where you just need to essentially SSO into those different elements and provide what information you want to move across to your Salesforce instance or HubSpot. We see a lot of people utilizing HubSpot to send through when people sign up for courses, when people complete courses, and having that email cadence that goes back and forward within those organizations as well. Customization when needed. And so the reason I say when needed is simply because when we look at this, it's people have the ability to either build out that custom learning platform from the ground up as they see fit, or they can just use the out-of-the-box solution to be up and running quickly. And then support for you and your learners. So what we really pride ourselves on at Appsembler is having that 5-minute response time or under 5-minute response time. It's sitting at about 4 minutes, 36 seconds for the past 12 weeks. When someone emails us or asks us a question, our response time to getting back to them. And what we really want to do is if someone's in the groove and editing courses, we don't want them waiting 24 hours because by then they've moved on to something else. We want to get in and answer that quickly. But also if they have users that are contacting us for their support for password resets or they're having trouble with a certain aspect of the course or they need their browser cookies reset, we provide all that experience with people as well. And so just to look at one of the customer case studies that I know we're coming up on the 15-minute mark here, but the first one that I'd just like to highlight is Chef. And so what we've really been able to achieve with Chef, and you can see a bit of a spin here towards the software industry. And what we really see with Chef is that they wanted a university. They wanted to be able to hands-on with their product with virtual labs, but they also wanted to utilize it for their conferences and things like that they attend so people can start with labs. They didn't want to spend half a day waiting for people to go through their product setup and everything that goes with it. And so what we've been able to do is train over 150,000 developers through the Learn Chef site and provide that instant hands-on product training of Chef itself. And what they've seen from that is it's been a really reliable, high volume source of leads, but their sales team have seen that when people actually come through, it actually translates into people who are ready to buy as opposed to people who are still going through their discovery process. And so with that, I am on the 15-minute mark. So I will stop sharing screen and open the floor up for any questions.
Great. Oh, sorry.
I see one here for where is Appsembler based. So my accent, as you can tell, I may not be able to tell, I'm Australian, so I'm based over in Australia, but I work US hours. And so our team is predominantly based in the US. We do have some team members in the APAC region, which is myself, and we've got 3 other employees in the APAC region. And so we service across the APAC region, but also mainly in the US.
Mm-hmm. Great. Well, thank you. Sorry, my microphone was unmuted. So, one other question. It's a very open question, but I'm more than sure that you will be able to answer that. So, how long does it take to master your first Open edX deployment, assuming we have some good programming background? What would you say to that?
So really depends. If you're utilizing Appsembler for that Open edX deployment, realistically, we try to lower the barriers so you don't actually need that programming background to be a part of that. And when we look at Open edX as a whole, it's written in common languages. So realistically, it's more about understanding the documentation. And what I'd say has been a massive help for Open edX and deployability and reducing the barriers to people being able to use Open edX is the adoption of Tutor as the official, I guess, or preferred deployment method. So Dockerizing Open edX and making it easier for people to deploy has definitely helped enabling people with Open edX. As far as putting a timeline on how long it would take someone to deploy Open edX, and I mean, good programming background. You also need to understand some of the infrastructure, understand some of the API side of the house. There's a little bit more that goes into it. And it's very hard to say to put a timeline on it. It could be from a week all the way throughout. We've seen people with 3 months, and also depends on the complexity of that Open edX deployment as well. There's a lot of variables that go into play there for that.
Yeah, that's great. Great. Well, another question. Well, this one also. So it seems that we always need a provider to host or use Open edX, like you or RadioNext or any other.
That's what we do is we provide easy access to Open edX, and I think saying that you always need a provider is not the case. You can definitely have a development team that's in-house go and put Open edX onto your own servers and deploy Open edX and have your own Open edX site that's completely managed by you without having to go to a third-party provider. But what you really miss there is you miss the expertise that you get of, companies like Appsembler and edX. There's a lot of other companies out there, Raccoon Gang, Edley. We all have this vast experience of what people need for an LMS and what works well for people. And so you might have this picture in your idea of, I want to build out this LMS, this is what I want, this is going to be perfect, all these different things. But someone may have tried it before and seen that it doesn't actually work and the user experience is not great. And so what the guarantee that you really get with edX, Edley, Appsembler is that you get that cross-section of what everyone else is doing in the market, what works, what's effective when you set up Open edX or you set up an LMS in general, not even talk about Open edX. And what we really provide is that guarantee that you're going to have a good product at the end.
That's right.
And taking away the need, because what we see is a big problem is that developers wanted to, either work on the product or they've got other priorities. And so what it is that guaranteed resources to achieve that Open edX deployment that comes with it as well.
Great. So I have one more question, and with this we should be finishing for the next presenter. So is there any open source components in one of the three pillars you've shown, Tahoe or the virtual labs or the third pillar?
So no, they're not open source as far as what they are provided. Tahoe is built on top of Open edX, so we utilize, we leverage the open source from Open edX there for Tahoe. For virtual labs, no, it's not. And also for our figures product, no, it's not. However, that is forming, I guess, a bit of the base that goes with the new analytics and reporting coming out. And I'm not sure, as I said, I've been in since July. I'm not 100% sure on the history surrounding why virtual labs wasn't open sourced for people to use, and also why the figures product is also not open source. So it's definitely something worthwhile looking at into the future, especially since we like, that open source environment.
That's excellent. Okay, so we've run out of time. Thank you, Abe, very much for your presentation, and because it should be very late at night over there, I'm right? And
it's early morning.
Oh, early morning. Yes, you're okay. That's great. So it's tomorrow there, right? For us. Great.
Yes, it is tomorrow. It's the 15th of December. It's already Friday. It's great.
Okay, great. So thank you again for your time and for your presentation. And now let's continue with Felipe, who's gonna share his presentation about aspects. Welcome, Felipe.
Hello, everyone, and thanks, Esteban, for the introduction. My name is Felipe Montoya. I am a CTO. I'm the CTO of edX. Let me share the screen here. Are you looking at the
Yes, we can see your screen. Yes, go ahead.
Great. All right, so as I was saying, I am a co-founder and CTO of edX, and I'm here to talk and give everyone an introduction on Aspects, which is a project that has been gaining some traction. So I'd like to go back a little bit and start from a very high level view. Looking at one of the key proposals, one of the promises that were made back when the edX project started, and that was that we were going to use data as a way of driving the product forward and doing research on education and overall making this a great platform. But that was, as we saw during the next few years, quite a technical challenge. And we've had solutions in the past trying to solve this. At the beginning, we had data packages sent individually to universities by edX. Then we resorted to having just large report sheets that users and operators had to download and process using Excel. And then there was edX Insights, which had a huge technology behind it, which was Hadoop or Elastic MapReduce, to finally chop all the data that was coming out of the application and give you some reports. And all of these solutions were trying to address the same issue. How do we get actionable data to the feedback loop and to make our courses better and to make our initiatives better? So the evolution of those initiatives is taking us here, or took us to the Aspects project, which started as OS, the Open Analytics Reference System. For those who knew that name, it evolved into Aspects. And this was a project that was started by accident, right at the beginning when it was T-Krill and when just the nonprofit started. One of the first pillars of the project that was weak at the point was the data analytics, and actually jumped right into it by designing this reference system. Then, by chances of life, we at edX were selected by the consortium of universities, public universities in Spain, to drive forward some developments they needed, which were in a heavy relation and were depended a lot on having a strong platform for doing analytics. So we jumped right in. We thought the Aspects project by the Novas that this reference system is much better than anything that we could come up with ourselves. And if we do something private and on a forward, then we'll get much collaboration. So we jumped right in. That's what ultimately led to me giving this presentation today. But I'll take you along for the ride. So it wasn't just Axiom and edX. There has been a lot of participation from the community, and this takes me to the main team that's contributing currently to the Aspects project. Different developers, Christian, Brian, Ray, and Jill, all coming from different organizations. And recently, we were joined by Chelsea Background in the role of product manager, which we are super happy about. We're thrilled to have her because it has been clear now for some time that not all the challenges are technical, and the definition of the product and how we drive this forward is as well quite a challenge in itself. And we're super thrilled to have Chelsea joining us in this challenge. So that's the bird's eye view. Let's look a little bit closer at what is Aspect native. If you go to GitHub at the OpenEdX organization side and look at the code, what will you find? And you'll find 3 different repositories that hold the code for aspects, most all of this. And those are tutor content aspects. That is a tutor plugin that is the glue that ties all the solution together. It has Docker Compose templates and Kubernetes manifests for people running instances using tutor local or for development purposes, and it has Kubernetes for larger scale clusters, which are normally associated with production-ready instances. That said, you could be running production on Docker Compose if the size is right for you. But you will also find all the configurations required to make superset work and all the queries and scripts that come with the project. We'll look at what some of that means in a moment. But that is the largest package, and that's what, in a nutshell, that's what you install when you install aspects. Now, we also have a second repository called the aspects DBT, which holds a lot of the data transformation definitions. We'll see what that means when we get to the extract load transform pipeline, but this is also a very important part of the truth, the heart of what aspects is doing. And you'll find a repository documentation. I suppose these slides will be shared later, so these are links to the specific repositories where everything is being held. Now, this isn't everything, and all the code isn't there necessarily, because aspects builds on top of other technologies and other pieces of technology, different repos, different projects that only when used together in the correct way deliver all the potential. So I made a few of those. Most importantly, we have ClickHouse, which is the analytics database, the data where everything goes. Apache Superset, which is a data visualization tool. It allows you to create reports, graphs, dashboards, whatnot. We'll see that later on in the presentation. We have a project by Open Fund called Drive, which is a learning record store, which does a lot of validation of the data that's coming in, does deduplication, and finally inserts the validates into ClickHouse, as well as Vector, which is a log forwarding tool made by Datadog. And that's a standard of log shipping. And these 4 pieces, joined with some pieces that are a little bit more from the OpenAX project, like the event routing backends and the event sync ClickHouse. And those make sure that the data that is being produced by the platform actually reaches all the rest of the aspect pipeline. So the routing backends transform the event information into XAP format, and events in ClickHouse listens to events in the life cycle of the application to make them records into ClickHouse as well. DBT, the last one that I'm mentioning here, goes hand in hand with aspects DBT, and that is the transformation layer for intermediate tables. That was a lot of technical stuff. If I lost you there for a minute, let's go back to more or less what is the current status of aspects. It's very near stable. We are at version 0.66, at least as of yesterday. We are evolving all the time, yes, but the technical aspects of the solution are almost settled, and for the most part, we're looking at product challenges before we decide that we can call something the first stable version of the unit. It is compatible with versions of the open releases starting at Nutmeg. So Nutmeg, Olive, Palm, and now Queens will be compatible with this. It is naturally open source. Everything that is being published in the Aspect projects is. It's designed for high scale. At this moment, we have made tests with 300 million records and aspect heritage brands without problems. We haven't tested it up to edX.org scale, but we have thrown the largest instances that we could get our hands on, and then we have thrown this data at it, and it was working great. It gives you data processing in near real time. Real time in data analytics means a few seconds after a user does an action at the LMS, you will be seeing things in your dashboards. And it's modular and extensible. That means as a project, we understand that there will be ways of looking at your data that are only yours and that no product can map in its entirety. So Aspect gives you enough space for you to go and write your own ways to look at this data in a way that doesn't require you to fork from the project, so that you can continue contributing and you can continue living in the newest releases as they come up. Protection of user data, so personal identifiable information, is written to the project in a way that is easy to protect or remove if you want to look at anonymized data. So this is something that not so intertwined as it was in other different analytic solutions, so that you can turn off a switch and have anonymized data, or turn on that switch and be able to look at some of the more personal data, like the username or the name of the user that is having the behavior that you want to investigate. And it has a good model of access control, so that your users, be it analysts, course authors, teachers, data analysts, only get the access that they need, or only get access to the data they need. All right, so how does it work? This is the official data flow diagram for Aspects, but this is out of the scope of this presentation. So we'll look at something a little bit more digestible. During the course of operating your courses, you will have application events that were normally being written as those. You will have data that goes and lives in the MySQL database, and you will have data that lives in the Mongo database. Difference there being Mongo more for the definition of the course content, and MySQL for everything else. And then Aspects is represented by those white lines. So it has ways of taking this data, application events, route them through XAPN statements or convert them into XAPN statements, and then use vector and drag to insert that into the data link. It has routing back events in ClickHouse to take data from MySQL and Mongo, and when this data is created, when an enrollment happens, when a course author saves the course, it listens for those events, formats them correctly, and puts them as well in the ClickHouse database. So it's taking the information and putting it in a data lake that is robust and scalable for you to use. That's the first part, source information. Now we have the second part, which is after data comes into ClickHouse, it is, and anyone who's worked with XAPI will know this, it's not the easiest to read. It's not in a format that is easy to understand or work with. So we take this data, the raw stream of data that's coming in, we do transformations on it, and we publish it again in ClickHouse. This way, we have some intermediate tables that are way more manageable and that give you the information that you're looking for in a format that is a lot more approachable than XAPI. And then there's a third part, which is it takes the data from the data link from ClickHouse, and it presents it in a nice visualized way with graphs and with access control in a nice UI in the browser. And this is what you get from Superset. And if that wasn't enough, you can take the graphs from Superset and insert them back into the LMS. So you can have things like graphs from Superset baked into the instructor dashboard at the LMS. and you can give those cycles live with the Aspect spreadsheet. And that's all. That's all good and shiny. But if you were to install Aspects today, what would you? What comes out of this? So all the technology for sure, but then you're faced with the most important question of all: what you want to ask your data? What is it that you want to know? So right now you get first version. I'm calling it here the V0 structured dashboard. That it gives information about your performance, the interaction users have had with the responses, the video views, this sort of information in nice graphs that you can filter and sort and train, start and end dates, also all that sort of interactions that we are used to with other analytics tools. Same thing for operators. It's a different view of the data because you're more interested in knowing your instances are running, data is flowing in, overall things are working. And very importantly, it gives you the ability to build your own dashboard. You will find in Superset different databases, most notably the ClickHouse database, but you can also access MySQL. And in there you will find different schemas ranging from the crudest of them, or the raw information that comes as XAPI, and more process information that comes out of DBT, which is this reporting schema, where you find different tables. Here's a list of the tables that you'll find that have the information that you want to know that is interesting and nice to update, such as the video usage of the video view information, the forum interactions, the grades, the content of the course. And then it's a matter of analyzing your data and using what is a common set of tools like SQL to interact with this data and understand it better and graph it accordingly. Some of the things you can do when you are building your dashboards is that you can take all the power of Aspects of Apache Superset and work with it, which gives you a big library of different types of graphs for writing line graphs, bar graphs, numeric graphs, geographical graphs, with all the power of an SQL-like language so that you can query your data in a way that makes sense for you, but also with tools for doing filtering, sorting, changing the colors, doing the styling of your graphs, and also with a way to cluster together or join and make different graphs that make more sense together as a dashboard. And in there, you can use cross filters so that clicking in one graph will filter the information of another graph. Sorry. And with this, we build custom dashboards that let you filter and understand your data and drill down into what the data is showing as you want. These are examples that we are trying to contribute back to the project, and hopefully you will be able to see them at some point soon in the beta. Which takes me, we are running out of time to the next steps of this project, which are get more organizations to collaborate. We are very near the version 1, but it's time, we need your input to get close to a project, understand what we're doing, and give us feedback in what you need, and what of what we're doing is good and is enough, and where do we need to put more work into. You can do that by exploring the docs or by joining the Aspects beta. And naturally, as everything in this community, we want you to participate and give us feedback in the continuous development process that probably will be great. So thank you very much for listening, and I'm sure we'll have some questions.
Thank you, Felipe. Thank you very much for your presentation. Let's see if we have any question in the chat. If not, well, people seem to be shy for this part. So
it is quite a ton of bricks that I just learned.
Yeah, it's a lot of information. So I think people are still processing. Well, just feel free to reach out Felipe in the carpet area after the session. So if you have any questions, just feel free to write it now and we'll review it later. And now let's go to the third presentation of today's meetup. So please come Santiago and Jenna. And this is going to be about the new OpenEdX product review proposal.
Awesome. Thank you, Esteban. Now let me share my screen here. Okay, can everybody see the blue slide deck?
Yes.
Great. So thanks, Esteban. My name is Jenna Makowski, and I am the product manager for the open source OpenEdX project at Axum Collaborative. And I'm here today with Santiago Suarez. Santiago, do you want to give a quick introduction of yourself?
Yes, I am Santiago Suarez. I am product manager at edX.
And Santiago and I are here today to talk about some of the incremental improvements we've been making to the product review process. So this has been a multi-month project that the product working group has been focused on. And we'll talk a little bit about improvements that we've made to this project over the past couple of months and really even the past year, and also why it's important and how you can start to participate in this process as well. So a little bit of context for folks about what we mean when we say the product review process. So the product review process is about reviewing contributions to the open source platform that have some sort of product facing component to them. So as an open source project, obviously the OpenEdX platform is reliant on contributions from the community. This is how we advance the platform forward. And the platform receives dozens and dozens of contributions every week. Many of those contributions, we've done a bit of analysis, about 70% of them are technical in nature. So these are contributions from folks who are using the platform like bug fixes or security patches or enhancements to the backend architecture. But another 30% of the contributions that come to the platform have some sort of product-facing angle to them. So in other words, it's a feature or it's an enhancement that somehow impacts the learner or the course author or an instructional designer or an administrator, which means that it needs to go through some sort of product review. And it's important, we think, for product to be involved in this open source contribution process for a couple of reasons. First and foremost, this results in simply a better product. This makes OpenEdX a stronger platform and a better LMS because the product managers across the community, so every provider, every organization that is working with the open source platform has product managers who are tapped into the end users, right? These are people who are talking with clients or customers or learners on a regular basis. And so the product folks really understand what the needs are on the ground. And so having that perspective in the open source contribution process is really important to making sure that we are building a good product that reflects the needs of the end user. Second, it makes the product more approachable, again, because we're building it with the end user in mind. So this creates kind of a virtuous circle, right? The more approachable the product is, the more people we have using it, and the more contributions we can get to make it an even stronger product. And finally, this helps make the product sticky as well, right? If we're building the right features, people will continue to use it and continue to come back to the platform over and over again. So as a whole, we feel it's very important to bring product into this open source contribution process. So I wanted to give an example first of what this product review process has looked like in the past. So contributions have been coming into the platform for years, really. And many times there's been a bit of a challenge because there's a bottleneck in terms of confusion around how these reviews should be undertaken. So this is an example of an older review that came in. This is presumably something that touches the end user. It's to add a toggle to redirecting to courseware after enrollment. But as you can see here, that there's not a ton of information here that would help a product manager to discern the value or the importance of this contribution. So there's just a quick one-line description. It doesn't give a ton of information. It uses the term waffle switch, which from a product perspective, that can be a confusing term. We may not be sure what that means. And so this is not meant to call out any contribution or any particular contribution from the past. This is more to call out the fact that we've had a systemic problem operationally when it comes to defining what we need for doing product review. And as a result, we would often get these contributions where there's simply no context for a product manager to understand what this means. So there's no user stories, there's no statement about impact or how this might directly impact end users. There's no explanation of why, as a platform, we might need this feature. We don't know if this is the best approach. And so as a result, product folks would see a contribution like this, get confused and maybe overlook it or not be sure what to do with it. And so we would often get these bottlenecks of contributions that are very meaningful to the platform, but have no way of doing the review in a meaningful or productive way. And so as a first step to begin to remedy this problem, the Open edX product working group started to look at different models that we could use to help us understand, like, how can we create an ideal contribution process? And this is the double diamond model of product management. We've shown this slide a couple of different times at various conferences and presentations. But this is the model that the working group is thinking of when it comes to an ideal product process. So it's built on a series of steps that start with discovery. So we want to understand what the problem is first and foremost before we come into any solution space. So, and this is a huge part of what product does in any company or any organization is discovery work, talking to users, really trying to understand what their pain points and problems are. Then once that process is underway, it can lead to the definition of the problem. So we don't start with the problem, we start with conversations with users, and they lead us to a sense of what the problem is. Once we define the problem, we can start to develop a solution, and from there we can deliver an implementation. And so this is the process that we want to sort of set on top of product review processes and contributions from across the community. As a group, we want to open up the process of what that discovery process looks like. We want that discovery research to be part of contributions when people are contributing new features to the platform. We need all of this context to help us understand what these contributions mean and why they're important. So the product working group started to think about a first round of improvements we could make to this process. And I'll pass it over to Santiago because Santiago was very instrumental in leading some of this work, and he can talk through what some of the first rounds of improvements were.
Yes, for this first round of improvement, we create guidelines for everything. We wanted to stock the PRs that were in the product area. So we created guidelines to identify which of those contributions need product review. And we create guidelines for submitters so they can understand what product information to include in the PRs so we can review it. And guidelines for the reviewers. So we as product managers have a guideline to read a PR and try to understand and formulate questions. But in these, when we developed these guidelines, we realized that the product review still gets stuck because it is difficult to have discussions and make changes in enhancements that have already developed, is difficult to discuss about something that is already built. We cannot formulate big changes, and sometimes we needed big changes in the PRs, or we not agree with what is built right now. This is an example of how a PR looks like right now, with context, with a checklist to understand what to evaluate, to approve or not approve a pull request. But we still, in this point, we still have this problem. I don't know, Jenny, if you want to add something of this part of the process?
Yeah, so like Santiago mentions, these guidelines that we created made some really good incremental improvements. So we started to get better descriptions of the context, right, which was one of the things that we were asking for, right, an explanation of the problem being solved, a description of how users will be impacted. And so we started to see the improvements in some of the pull requests that were coming through. But like Santiago just described, there were still some challenges that we were running into because we were getting these PRs after all of the code had been written. And so even though we were getting better product information, it was still like the code had already been implemented. And so there was no space for discussion about whether it was the best implementation. And this is another example of why this was still a challenge. So this was a contribution that was rejected simply because it wasn't implemented platform-wide. So this was a pull request to change the schedule and date input. So it would be, we could have more customization of the UTC time zone use in Studio, which is a huge problem. I think everybody agrees that this is like a platform-wide issue and it needs a solution. But unfortunately, this contribution only fixed part of the problem, only fixed that feature in one part of Studio, and it was not platform-wide. And so, but because the code had already been written, there was no chance to go back and say, let's actually try and implement this in a platform-wide way so that we can benefit the broadest use of the broadest swath of users. And so we had to reject it, which was a big shame because it was good work and it was simply just wasted time and wasted opportunity. And so what we really want to be doing here is we realized with this framework, we were still getting contributions at the very end of the process, right, when it's being delivered. And what we want to do is shift the process left, right? So we want to open up the product review process so that we are getting product documentation at the very beginning of the process when discovery work is still being undertaken, so that we can, as a community, I'll have a voice in how features are being developed in a way that can be platform-wide and that can take into account stakeholder perspectives from across various different use cases. And so we went back to the drawing board and we decided to consider a second round of improvements. And with this round of improvements, we are hoping to get product managers to submit product requirement documentation early. The product working group will help to triage this process and coordinate the review process. And we also clearly delineated who makes the approval decisions in this process. And again, Santiago and his team at edX have been very, very helpful and involved in helping define this process. So I'm going to turn it over to Santiago to talk through, or actually, before we do that, this is the documentation for the product review process now as it currently exists. There's a QR code here, so I invite everybody to go to that link and read. This is just a quick one-page document about how the current review process works, how you can get involved, as well as templates. But Santiago here is going to talk about a couple of specific examples so you can get a sense of what this new process looks like from somebody who has built it from the ground up.
Yeah, so these screenshots are for the first pilot sample that of this product process. Here, we began with the discussion before coding. We want to encounter all the disagreements. We want to come into an agreement before coding. So for this example, I based this documentation in the one-pager methodology that try to bring light into this type of feature or enterprise proposals. Right now, we have an overview with context about this feature enhancement. We have the problem first, what we are trying to solve. The key use cases try to support the problem. How we identify this problem? Here we have key use cases that we created talking with final users. And with these key use cases, we can understand the solution too, because the solution try to solve all the use cases that we find in the discovery process. Here we describe all the solution with Figma prototypes from the front end, with next slide please, with the roles, distribution, access, with a proposal of technical solution, with additional information like how other LMSs solve the same problem and how we are going to maintain this in time. But for this first iteration, I personally put a concrete solution. We still begin with this solution. For the second example, I don't know if the second example for here. No, okay. For the second example, we get back and step, and we begin with the problem. So if you notice, the difference is just in the title. The document have the same structure in both cases, but in this case, I begin with the problem, explaining the problem, and then I propose a solution, but I am open to other members of the community to propose a solution for the same problem. I don't want to implement my solution. I want to solve a problem, and I am open to listen any problem, any solution that you want to propose. So we can go back to the last slide. Yes, Jana, please comment here the results.
Yeah, so this has ended up being exactly what we wanted to happen with this process. So in the first example, Santiago just walked you through with this feature enhancement to hide sections from the course outline. We ended up generating a dialogue, and you can see here that there are 55 comments on this proposal. There were folks from various different organizations involved. We had product and engineering input in this dialogue. And as a result, we landed on an approach that was actually not the original approach, but that was actually a better approach and took a sort of more of a holistic platform-wide view of the solution. The other important component to this is from a core product perspective, we were able to design a solution that we can sort of build on in the future as we think about a future phase for this work. So it was really important to bring in all of these different perspectives early into the process, because we landed on a solution that ends up being a better one. And we removed the bottleneck for review later. So once the code is implemented, we already agree on the solution, which means the code should go through the approval process quickly and seamlessly, which is the bottleneck that we were experiencing at the very beginning. Another example of the impact of this. So the second project, or the second proposal, Santiago talked about, which was presenting simply this problem that they've encountered with their user discovery, that there aren't enough options to create content that they would like. In the process of sharing this proposal, we discovered that some designers at edX.org had actually encountered this problem as well a couple of years ago, and had already designed some solutions for it in Figma like 2 years ago. And so right off the bat, we were able to discover that there's already been work done toward this end. There's already been some usability tests done. And so Santiago's UX team didn't have to start from scratch. We were able to find these files that had already been circulated among some users, and we can build off of those. So we're building on knowledge that already exists in the community rather than starting from scratch, which has been a historic problem as well when developing new features on the platform.
I have to tell that in both use cases, we made a lot of changes, and at the end we come into an agreement. And we don't spend time coding something that we have to review, to rewrite before. This is the agreement that we come to, and we are going to develop it.
Yeah, perfect summary. So in terms of, we just wanted to touch a little bit on like the long-term impact. So with this new process, we also focused on who's going to be the final decision makers in this process. So final approval comes from the product working group. Now that we have this product working group up and running, as well as the product owner of the repo. So building on the maintainership program that we have up and running as well. And there's some basic like open source codes of conduct here. If both parties approve of the spec, then it's considered approved and can be implemented. If either party disagrees, then we'll continue with revisions until we can reach agreement. And then if agreement is not reached, it will ultimately be the product working group as sort of the stewards of the project to make a final decision on whether a proposal is accepted. But ultimately, we want to land in the space B, right? If we can continue to iterate on these until we land on an agreement together as a community. And pass it back to Santiago.
Yeah. So why you should join into this process? If you are a developer, a product manager, or you represent an organization, please send people to the core product working group. Send people of your team to be part of this, because this help you and help all the community. You will save time and resources. You will avoid duplicate effort. For example, in one of our projects, community members were already working on same features that we want. So we which allow us to focus on new functionalities and distribute the work. Other advantage is that you can vote yourself by improving the final product, that is OpenEdX. If you are a partner, or if you have your site into the in OpenEdX, the contributions for the product, for the core product, will benefits you. You will have more attractive and more complete solutions, and this is a positive influence in the sales opportunities. And the third reason is you will benefit of this because you have the opportunity to influence in the development of the product and of the final product. We are going as a community to listen to you in all the cases. You can bring your cases, your use cases. You can bring your clients' use cases, and we can create an effective solution for everyone. So join the product process, be part of these changes. And here we have the first one is the Slack channel. You just scan it and you will be part of this product process. In the Slack channel, we are discussing all this. You have questions, you can share there. And the second one is the product process that we share in the last slides. Yeah, so that's all. Thank you very much. Please join us.
Yes, and I would add there's really two ways to join. One is obviously if you want to be contributing new features to that have a product facing bent, you can submit a proposal like we've just outlined. We also in the process of creating this new operational workflow, in the last 2 months, I think we now have 15 or 16 different proposals that have been submitted, which is amazing. We also need folks to help us review them. We're a small team in the product working group, and the whole idea is that we want to open the reviewing process to anyone in the community who may have an expertise or subject matter expertise with a certain feature or with a certain group of end users. And so in that second QR code, you can easily get a link to all of the proposals that are currently in process. If there's one that interests you, if you know your clients are also interested in that feature, or if you yourself are interested in that feature, please join in. The idea is that we want anybody who is interested in reviewing to start reviewing, and all it takes is to read the review and make comments on the proposals in the wiki. So we welcome everybody to join this process, and we look forward to getting more proposals in the future.
Great. Well,
and huge thanks to EduNext. Like you guys have been very instrumental in getting this project off the ground. It's a huge round of applause, I think, to EduNext is deserved here.
Always.
Great. Thank you, Jenna. Thank you, Santiago, for your presentation. And well, now, sorry to everyone, we passed a little bit the hour. Now we can continue the conversation in the main area where you can find the speakers in the different carpet areas. So thank you for being here, and well, hope to see you in the next OpenX meetup.